Congrats on getting beyond $1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of EasyPay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond $1 million.
Max Finn, I'm glad that you showed up. We've got lots of stuff to talk about. People see you on TikTok all over the planet. We will certainly dive into some of that stuff, but I want to bounce around in your life because you've got a lot of other interesting things going on.
I'm pumped, man. I'm glad I could be here. The AC, it's nice and cool. I know last week we had to reschedule. My AC went out like 2 hours before we were supposed to go, and I was just like, I can't do it, man. I can deal with a lot as an entrepreneur. I can't deal with being uncomfortably hot, and we have a 2-year-old, so he definitely can't deal with being hot, and then my wife has to deal with it, which is then I'm dealing with my wife and my son. So nobody likes that, right? Nobody wants to be uncomfortable, but we're chilling. We got the cool air. And we got a thunderstorm coming in. So I said, so if there's any crazy thunder in the background, it's because we live in Florida and this is what we deal with every day.
Yep. Florida and Texas, you need AC.
Yep.
And also upset children and wives inevitably are going to end up in the room with you.
Yep.
And that's not ideal when you're recording. Also, PSA for any employees, don't have your kids running around when you're on a call ever. It's never something that the other party likes if you have forgotten that now that you have kids.
Yeah, it's not fun. That's why I am as far away from the action as possible up in our house.
I love it. Well, let's jump into stuff. I want to talk social, but before we do that, give a little background. Actually, let's give a little background on kind of what businesses you have now. I like to sort of establish frame for people. Sure. So what are the businesses that you have currently, and then we'll back out?
Yeah, I mean, the 3 primary focuses right now are, we have Unicorn Traffic, which is a performance marketing agency. And we've been in the agency space for over a decade now, have done it every way you could think of, the kind of full service retainer route, the high-end premium boutique route. And we've inevitably, and we can talk about this, we can go down this rabbit hole, I inevitably found out is they all kind of suck. They all have been in the same place at some point. But we like buying media, we like scaling. So performance for us is the way to go, which means that we actually front the ad spend. We actually get paid on just CPA or CPLs. And it gives us a lot more leverage in the relationship. We can scale more aggressively. So that business did just shy of $1 million last month. We'll probably do 1.5 this month. It's growing really fast. It's a lot of fun. There'll be some big plans for that business. We have Unicorn Innovations, which is our education business. We do trainings. We have our Social Trends app. It's got all kinds of cool stuff in there for media buyers and marketers. We have our Insiders program, which is a paid community and courses. And we have a coaching program we just launched 2 months ago, TikTok Ads Accelerator, 8-week coaching program, pretty self-explanatory. That's about a $200K a month business. Coaching started to really take off though. So that's the goal there, is to be, well north of $1 million by the end of the year on the info business. And then we have Hero Brands, which is like our portfolio of e-com properties and content sites in the political space. Fun topic for us to talk about. And that business has been booming. So we have just north of $800K a month in recurring revenue. Plus we do about the same amount, a little higher every month in straight sale revenue. And that business, the next 16 months going into the election, this is when things really start to ramp up. So it's going to be a fun Q4 and a fun next year and a half with that business.
Yeah, I love that. I love that topic in particular. We've got a bunch of people that are tied into the political space, whether it's through direct political affiliation or it's through sort of topical things that tie to one of the parties.
Yeah.
So, we do a bunch of survival brands. EasyPay Direct has survival clients, and those inevitably are tied to the right? To
same customer
candidates, et cetera.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I want to highlight something which is going down the agency rabbit hole, and you've tried it a bunch of different ways, and you landed on performance, and you said, we front the ad spend, and then we take a part of the lift. Very early in my entrepreneurial journey, I formed the hypothesis that marketing agencies were largely full of shit and terrible. And the only way, because here's the thing, if an agency is really good, they're going to do it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the only area that I really believe is the gap between doing it yourself and most agencies is a performance-based agency, where they say, look, we'll do it, but only if we get a big part of the upside, right? So you're sort of getting all the benefits and taking somebody else's product or brand and leveraging it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that assumption. Agencies are a great business for people that are getting started. I think it's one of the best ways to get into the industry, because you can be relatively young, you can have very limited resources, but you can be pretty good at a service, a marketing service, and you can get up to 10, 20K a month in income pretty quickly by doing that. But like once you get beyond that point, it becomes very, very hard to scale. It becomes an HR company. And so, yeah, and the churn, dealing with clients, there's so much stuff about it that's just like, it's not fun. It's not enjoyable. And you basically become a customer service company, an HR company, and you move away from just the pureness of just media buying and scaling. Performance goes back to that. Like that's all we do is we just media buy. We don't have to worry about client calls and client reports and clients calling us up and saying, hey, our ROAS was too low yesterday, freaking out. Like we don't have to worry about churn. We're the prize in a relationship. But like you said, it's very hard because we take all the risk. So if you're not good at what you do, you can't do it, right? You need to be really, really good at media buying. You need to be really good at vetting offers and getting the right offers in place, have a really good testing process in there and application and vetting. And then the big one that nobody really thinks about is you need to have access to capital, because it gets very expensive very fast if you're funding the ad spend and you're scaling. So like right now, just for On It, which is our biggest partner, we're spending about $40,000 a day. We get paid out every Friday, essentially. So that means essentially we have to kind of float, $280 to $350K a week on cards, and we're paying them off multiple times a day. So it becomes a cash management game, and you need to have access to lines of credit, and also, high risk tolerance on fronting a lot of cash. And a lot of people can't do that. And that's just one offer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that goes back to being good marketers, right? Being good at the actual process. And the other thing that you just said, which illustrates the point, is that agencies are a good business to get into because it's relatively easy to get to 10, 20 grand a month. And you can be young doing it.
Yep.
But what is inferred through that statement is you don't actually have to be great at it, because you're using somebody else's money to learn the process of getting great. Exactly. Right, of learning how to market. Yeah. So, that's the yellow or red flag for business owners that are hiring agencies for different things. Well, let's back out for a minute. So tell me the beginning of business for you.
It's all I've done. I'm very fortunate in that I came from an entrepreneurial family, right? So my grandpa was an entrepreneur, my dad was an entrepreneur. And so that's like, very, very few people get that insight where it's like you actually see this as a possibility pretty young. Most people just see 9 to 5, and that's like what they see. And then eventually they figure it out once they get out of college and they get older. So like my grandpa was a big residential developer, was one of the first guys to come up with the idea of like a planned community, which is now very common, right? So it's the idea of like building a community around schools, infrastructure, supermarkets. So it's, all kind of self-contained, and built a lot of the residential neighborhoods in like Eastern Pennsylvania, Northern Jersey, started a commercial real estate company called New American Network, basically a franchise model for commercial real estate that eventually became NAI Global, which we sold as a family in 2012. And that had, I think 5,500 brokers, agents around the world in 55 countries. So it was a big company. And so I saw my grandpa start that, and then I saw my dad kind of grow it from a, domestic company to international company. And just, I saw the good stuff. I saw the, we went from when I was probably from 0 to 10, living what I would consider like a pretty, middle income life, to then, it doing better and doing more middle income, middle upper. But then I saw the challenges. It's, when the recession hit and certain things like almost went bankrupt, like almost lost everything. So saw this kind of really dramatic swings and volatility of that lifestyle. But it's like, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. Like that's all I saw. And that's all I knew my entire life. It was like, I'm not going to work for anybody. Like I'm going to start my own thing. There was never like an option. There's never like a plan B where it's like, I'm going to work a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm. Where did experience come from for you in that? Did you work for the family businesses? Did you have 9 to 5s before you did your own thing?
Yeah. I mean, so I did the typical like, summer gigs when I was in high school and stuff. I think it's important to build like character to work like, shitty low paying jobs. Like I worked, deli, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., 2-3 summers in a row. Like, I think it's good. I think it's healthy to build like work ethic and respect for like hard work. Right. But then I also was fortunate to get to work with my dad and help them with kind of early as Web 2.0, social media marketing, all that stuff. Cause I was younger, I was kind of getting it. Commercial real estate's not known for being the most tech savvy, and the most advanced when it comes to marketing strategies. So I was able to bring a lot of that insight in there, even though like I was so really young in experience, but I kind of got it pretty early on, just the marketing aspect of it. So I was able to bring that in there. I did that for about 2 years. But then in college, started my first company. And so from basically college, my junior year in college to today, it's all been just through me doing things and just experience and lots of failures, a few good successes, but really just hands-on, boots on the ground learning, but also having great mentors, like having the ability to like talk to my dad and my grandpa and like different people and like get their feedback and their insight on things has been invaluable. Like it's really hard to put a dollar value on that access.
Yeah, I think those things are, the upbringing is such a big deal. I mean, it's a nature nurture conversation, but the seeds that get planted mentally last a very long time. My relationship with money is still evolving, but I grew up in this money doesn't grow on trees. It's scarce and don't spend it. And how that manifested later as money became much more abundant was I wasn't leveraging it the way that I could. And probably still today, I'm not leveraging it the way I could. Now, on the one hand, that allows me to be very pragmatic in my approach to security. And the other, I'm not doubling down as much as I could or taking the swings that I could because I have a heightened level of need around security with financially. How did that play out with you? Did you look at it early and realize, money as a tool, or what was your relationship with money through that process and how has it changed?
Yeah, it's I've definitely seen it as a tool and as a valuable asset to leverage pretty early on, especially because like the background is commercial real estate, and so like right. Just understanding how real estate works, especially commercial, like and debt and leverage, like it gave me a unique perspective on finance that I think a lot of people don't have. And then also in college, I got really into kind of financial mathematics and things like that. So I like went down the rabbit hole, like in terms of studying, of just understanding how money works. And so I was lucky there and had that understanding coming out of school. But on the other side, I've also always had this other side of me that's like, I've had a hard time. And it's funny because like a business partner, Jeremy, has a, very different, not very, very different, but like a different view of spending and money than I do. He's like much, much, much more frugal and conservative, and also just different. He's single, I'm married, I have a kid. I have just like, our lives are different. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I've been like anti being frugal, but I've always like thought, I don't want to wait until I'm like 70 years old to like enjoy life. It's always this balancing act for me, where there's all these people on social media that are always talking about like, even if you're a millionaire, like clip coupons, like live super frugal. I think it's called like FIRE, or there's like an acronym, like a community of people that like independent, like retire early and like live frugally. Oh, right. It's like a whole movement thing, and not bashing it. Like that's great. That's what you want to do. But for me, it's just like, I don't get what the point is. I don't understand the point of, like working so hard to earn a good income and do well, to defer the enjoyment of that for a really long period of time. It's one thing to say like, I want to get the next 5 years, like through 5 years, and I want to be 30 or 35 and be at this point. It's another thing to say like, I'll enjoy life at 60 or 70 or 80, because it's like, you can die. Like anything can happen. Tomorrow you get hit by a car, you could get a disease. Like it's, we think morbidly, but it's like something bad can happen. And it's like, you can't take money with you. You can't take all that with you. And then you sacrifice enjoying your life, and you drove, a 15-year-old car that broke down all the time and all these things just because you wanted to have something in the future. So for me, it's been a balancing act. And the last thing I'll say is like, I've always worked well under pressure as well. Like I've always viewed it as like focusing on moving the income lever over the expense lever for me has always been a better motivator, where it's like, if I've ever been through struggling periods where I've struggled financially, it's always been like that pressure has made me level up and get to another level. That's created another buffer. So again, like not the best financial person, the best financial advice, but for me, it's been a balancing act. It's been like, I'm not super cheap. And I always focus on just like, I can make more money, I can do better than like, let me keep cutting expenses and be like extra frugal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like the notion of hit the income lever instead of the expense lever and focus on that. And changing the paradigm from money doesn't grow on trees to you can always make more money.
Yeah.
Right. That's not the scarce element in life. Now, that said, I think that for me, what's important is that there is a framework in place mentally so that I can kind of reconcile what's acceptable to spend or not. And if you think about it and create some, guardrails initially, it makes it easier to digest. And I think it's like most things in life, right? If you pre-plan, then when you're in the moment, you can take emotion out of it pretty easily, right? If you make the decision ahead of time. And so for me, I had I set some parameters around spending on frivolous things like cars. And so my rule growing up was I won't spend more than 5% of my monthly on a car. And that led me to, and I didn't want, many cars. I wanted a dope car at some point. So I didn't buy a car for many, 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 many years until I could buy, an expensive car and not worry about it at all. But that 5% mark is so far beyond what most people, or it's so much lower than what most people rationalize as an expense for a car. And I think that those things are good in general, because if you do set those parameters in place, once you get there, then you don't have to think about it or worry about it at all, right? You're just saying, hey, I can spend this money and there's no chance I'm going to redline, right? There's no chance that I'm going to go under because I overspent or got wild. But there is the balance of how much are you going to, like if you take that principle and apply it to business and business spending, the question is, how quickly are you going to accelerate? So, in the world of ads, how much you said you've got to have the risk tolerance to deal with putting a bunch of money out in your, performance-based marketing agency. How do you think about money in that space? Like when is it a test or when is it doubling down, and how do you know when to spend more money?
That's a great question. And frankly, it's a question that we've been dealing with a lot in our different businesses. I think it's important to sit down and have a clear discussion, especially in our partners. All of our businesses, we have partners in. None of we have I have a holding company. That holding company owned by equity in all the businesses, and then pays me and my wife, different people, a salary. But but for our main companies, they're all owned by different partners. And so I think it's important to get on the same page of what is our goal with this business? And I don't think enough people, especially in the agency game, think about this. Is my goal to build something that I'm going to sell or exit, or is it to build something that's going to spin off cash, right? And I think the ideal scenario is you have some businesses that are cash flow businesses, some businesses that are big swings, where I'm building something that could have a large payday. Because it's very difficult to build wealth without having large liquidation events. It's hard, just on pure income. It becomes it's not that it's impossible. You can spin off a lot of money, but it's much easier to build wealth when you get a $5 million lump sum amount that you can then deploy. Like you can do a lot more when you have capital, especially right now if we're going to like, if the economy tanks, if things pull back, like having cash versus I make 5 million a year or $1 million a year and it's coming every, 2 weeks or every month in distributions. So we look at our businesses that way. It's like, okay, our goal with this business is we're building this and this is something we think we could sell. And so if that's the goal, we need to build teams, we need to invest in systems, we need to reinvest capital into it because we want to build something people want to buy, right? Nobody wants to buy a business that's just like a lifestyle cash flow business because when they buy it, like there's nothing in place to keep the cash flow coming, right? But then other businesses like, okay, this is purely just like, nobody's going to buy this business, right? So let's just maximize how much cash we pull out of it and keep kind of the minimum amount in the business to keep it running and moving forward and kind of consistently growing. So we kind of break our businesses down that way in terms of like what the goal is. And that drives a lot of our short and long-term decision-making and investments in determining how we actually use cash in the business.
Interesting. And how do you think about it when you are, let's say you are taking somebody else's business, you are the marketing agency. Are you approaching it? Are you asking them what their approach is to the business? Or are you looking and saying, hey, we were hired to scale an offer. We're putting money into it to grow it.
Yeah, I would say most businesses that come to us from performance, the ideal scenario is that they're on the asset building side. Because the whole way it works is you need to be able to pay pretty aggressive CPAs for performance to scale. Like if you're a business, you're a brand, and you're selling, whatever widget it is, and you're coming to say, I want to have an affiliate program. I want to have affiliate drive traffic and drive me sales. Great channel to have. But you're saying we need to be profitable day one. It's going to be difficult unless you're somehow like have crazy economics and your AOV is just off the chart. But for most businesses, that's not going to be in the cards. It's going to be hard for you to get affiliates attracted, like the top players attracted to come run your business. If you're basically saying like, hey, your CPA that we pay you needs to be lower than like we get internally. Just it's not going to work. So in our best relationships, it's with companies that understand, hey, this is about acquiring customers. This is about growth and rapid growth. And we'll make money on the back end. And also like we're trying to build this to sell it. And so we know like our business is way more attractive with an extra 5,000, 10,000 customers a month than it is if we keep growing at the rate we're growing. And so we're willing to pour fuel into that fire, go into the red a little bit to make it happen because it's worth it for us. So that's the ideal type of partner we're looking for. If you're looking for cash flow, performance is a tough channel. Unless you're doing it on the organic side. So if you get a bunch of like publishers, like content sites and influencers, people that aren't doing paid, you can maybe get away with lower CPAs with them because they're not putting cash into it. It's just, hey, we have traffic. We're going to tell our traffic where to go. But for people like us that are actually putting ad spend into it, it needs to be a pretty aggressive payout.
Yeah. So one of the, and basically what I heard was, if you're getting social traffic, it's cheaper to get that traffic to the end location to buy stuff than it is if you're paying for ads to get people to buy stuff. And when you're scaling up ads, you want to know that you're getting your money back or close, and then just dump cash because you're going to acquire customers and then try to increase the average order value, the AOV, or the lifetime value of the customer to balance that out later.
Yeah.
Is that exactly that the summary?
Yeah.
So one of the flags that or issues that we see inside of EasyPay Direct is when people go into performance and they start scaling ads and they grow fast, right? And they go from, because we have a couple very good performance agencies that send us business or that we see performing, and they'll go from 10 grand a month to 50 to 100 to 500 to $1 million a month to $2 million a month. But if they didn't figure out the back end, it's not uncommon to see them go from 2 million a month to 100 grand a month or to zero, right? And so they scaled it, and it was a rapid scale of an offer or one product, and then it tanks. How do you prevent that happening? What's the When would you not want to go performance and ramp it up like that? And how do you avoid that cliff?
We avoid it because by being very selective with who we work with. So our ideal partner is,
as an agency,
as a performance agency, our ideal kind of client coming onto that is already a $50 million a year or bigger business. So we're not really looking for sub 50, definitely not kind of sub $20 million a year businesses for that very issue, which is on both sides of the equation. So one is the risk of them not knowing their numbers well enough, their LTV good enough, or having the perfect subscription product, whatever it is they need to move that needle and keep things going. And so things can crash on the back end of it. What actually happens more often than not is the front end breaks, because every business, like I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm sure you've heard the same thing. Businesses come to you and say, hey, I want to scale. It's like, okay, like if we're getting, CPAs at this or ROAS at this, like how much are you willing to spend? How much can you scale? And they'll say, well, infinite. That's like the usual answer. It's like, we'll spend as much money as possible. Well, and
right.
The answer actually is it's not infinite. It's constrained by your supply chain and your logistics and how much capital do you have to buy inventory and in your cash conversion cycle and all these things. And most businesses under that level have no idea what any of that means. So it's like you scale things for them. Let's say they're a $5-10 million company. You start doing 200 orders a day from, and 6 weeks in, 8 weeks in, they're like, hey, we actually need to pause because we're out of inventory and it's going to be another 3 months before we get a shipment. Or we need to pause because we just got a deal with Walmart or Target to do retail and we only have enough cash. Like they're going to beat us on a margin. So we need to put all of our cash into that. Like that happens that's happened lots of times to us. And so now we just really don't operate with those types of companies. We look at companies 50, 100 plus million that are looking to be, $500 million companies, $1 billion companies. They're looking to be like really big companies, but at the time they're starting, they still have a lot of stuff figured out now. They have, deeper pockets. They have the supply chain figured out. They have the back end numbers figured out. They know what their retention rate is. They know what their LTV is 3 months in, 6 months in, 12 months in. They have that all dialed in. So there's much less, not that it's impossible. Businesses can still fail at 50 million or 100 million, but it's less likely than a 10, 20, $30 million a year business that breaks.
So the two things that I heard, you're coming from the frame of if you are an agency and taking on clients, be careful of who you take on.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people listening that it's their business, right? And so they're thinking, hey, do I hire a performance agency or do I look at how to scale internally and scale my ads? And the two flags that I heard there were, you better be really clear on the rest of the customer life cycle and how you can build up your LTV or your average order, or already have it in place.
Yeah.
And that was number one. And the other was the rest of the business. The rest was like the operations of the business. And can you stress test your customer service, your logistics, your product creation, depending on what that is, and all of the elements of actually delivering the product.
Yeah. And then in that, which is kind of pulling it out, because I think it's almost its own thing, is the financial aspect of it. A lot of people don't look at it because I find most people are, when it gets within the finances, it's just like, I don't want to touch it. It's like, it's so complicated and it's boring. It's like, I just don't want to do it. I'm just kind of throw it over here and it'll work out. But it's like, that's been probably the single biggest variable for Hero Brands be able to grow the way it's grown without any outside capital, is the fact that we have a negative cash conversion cycle with that business, meaning that we have such great terms and financial vehicles in terms of how we pay invoices and our credit and stuff there, that we actually collect revenue before we pay for the product that we sold to collect the revenue, which is like, that's how Gymshark also grew really fast. There's a few businesses that, like, if you can get close to a negative cash conversion cycle, or even just shrink your cash conversion cycle dramatically, like, that's one of the most valuable things you can do for your business. That can literally change whether your business survives and grows or fails, is how long you're floating that cash from when you bought inventory to when you collect money selling that inventory.
Yeah. It's interesting because you spent college learning finance and you grew up in a household where you learned some financial literacy and leverage through commercial real estate. And I think you're 100% right, which is that almost all business owners, certainly, up and coming entrepreneurs that are trying to bootstrap, they're not financially literate. They can't speak in those terms. They don't know what they mean, and it seems complicated. And that language is something along the lines of, oh, well, I'm not a finance guy, or I'm not a finance person. And the irony is that there was a time not so long ago where you would hear people say, oh, well, I'm not really a computer person.
Yep.
And this is like, 10 years ago.
I mean, not long ago.
I'm not really you can't say that shit right now. Like, what are you fucking kidding? Like, who says I'm not a computer person right now? What does that mean? Yet you have entrepreneurs that will say, oh, I'm not really a finance person. It's a building block of and I think in some business models more than others, but it's a building block certainly in physical products or heavily ad-driven products, where if you don't have a grip on it, you're pretty handicapped.
It's a huge void for a lot of small businesses, is the financial understanding, the financial literacy. I mean, frankly, I don't think there are many excuses nowadays to not. I think it's really just ignorance or just laziness, to be totally blunt about it. The information is there. You don't need to go to Harvard to understand this stuff. There are amazing channels that talk about finance on YouTube. I mean, on TikTok, there's the Miss Excel, what's her name? The Excel woman who blew up doing Excel trainings. On TikTok, she just does all kinds of crazy Excel stuff. There's so much good content out there on every channel that can teach you all the basics.
Can you think of any off the top YouTube channels that are focused on finance?
I can't, because I don't look at them, because I haven't had to research that, so I don't know, but I know they're out there. I know for a fact there are, because there's in every topic, any hobby I have or anything I'm interested in, there's sub-communities out there of people that's all they do. They're full-time creators on a specific topic.
Well, let me back out on that then and ask a more global question, because yes, I think that the information's everywhere, but curating or vetting the information can be difficult, because there's a huge difference between somebody that is good at playing the game of social to get attention and get virality and build an audience, and somebody that actually knows what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you would look for if you were trying to vet credibility of a source to learn from online when you're learning a new topic?
That is a $1 billion question. And if I had the answer to that, I don't know. Short of doing a kind of deep dive on the individual, that's really the only thing you can do. Because the challenge is you're in this weird place where you don't know. The whole reason you're there is because you don't know about the topic. So it's very difficult to call BS. Transparently, it's difficult to call BS even when you know about stuff. There's people in our industry that it comes out a few years later, they were just totally full of it, but they were really good at saying the right things. Because if you're a good talker and you're good at creating content, you can go out there and you can consume from all the best people that are actually legit and just pull. You can pull this thing, this phrase. Somebody could take this clip or the video I did a few weeks ago on cash conversion cycles, and they can just reword it, repurpose it. They might have a better personality, better follower. They could just shoot the exact same video talking about it, and it's a correct video. It's there's nothing wrong about it. They're just repurposing it, but you don't know that they don't know what they're talking about. So it's almost impossible to vet through the content itself. The only two ways really is, one, if you are, able to see that person in long form conversations. That's probably that's why I think Rogan and guys like Lex Friedman have grown so substantially, is because it's impossible. It's very easy to BS in 15-minute sound bites. It is almost impossible to, I would actually say pretty much totally impossible to BS on a 3-hour long form unedited discussion where somebody's just asking you questions and deeper questions. Eventually you're going to slip up. Eventually you're going to be like, I don't know. And so, potentially looking for, hey, has this person done, 1.5 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour podcast? Have they spoken on stage? Have they done panels? Are there things that go watch them that are unedited, where it's live potentially, where it's really difficult to be a con artist essentially? That's one thing. And the other is just to do a deeper dive on the person, right? It's go look at their background, go look at where they've been featured, For me, for example, and again, not like, it's not about like, patting myself on the back or like tooting my own horn, but it's like, eventually at some point you can't do it for this long if you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I've been lucky enough that I've been able to operate in the marketing role for about a decade, and I've continued to progress. And because of that, I've been able to speak pretty much everywhere, pretty much every stage, and do programs for a lot of industry leaders. So it's whether it's digital marketer, whether it's Kajabi, whether it's ClickBank, whatever it is, like I've been able to do things at these different companies, whether it's going to TikTok headquarters, like, and so at some point that just stacks up enough that it's like, either this person is the greatest con artist in the world and they're playing the longest con, or they probably know what they're talking about, right? It's either one of those things. So it's like, you got to look at the person's resume. If like they just popped up a year ago and they haven't spoken on any major event and no big podcast in the space sat them on it, like there's a few credibility things you can look for pretty quickly, where it's like, maybe this person's legit, but like they're new and nobody's found out yet, or they're just, full of it.
Yeah, I love that. So, and I think some of the takeaways and the flip side of that is, it's not about the size of their following.
No.
It's not about who they had on as guests, unless you're just listening to them as an interviewer. But in terms of expertise, long form is tough to cheat for now, until AI and compute power gets better and you can put something in your ear and digest quicker or transform quicker. But then duration is the other. And one of the we've done a bunch of payments for Tony Robbins, and so when that name comes up in the entrepreneurial community, there's basically no negativity around it. But in the rest of the world, certainly before his Netflix documentary, there was. And so people were like, oh, motivational guru guy. And the thing that I would always say is, look, love him or hate him, you cannot be around for 40 years and still fill rooms with 5, 10, 15,000 people if you're full of shit. Yeah. Like, clearly a bunch of people like him and he's helping people, or he couldn't continue to do that in this information era.
Yeah, it's a fact. I mean, honestly, like, I don't care at that point, when you're that level, like, I don't even care what your topic is. Like, just the ability to get onto a stage and command attention for days. He does like multi-day sessions.
Mind blowing.
For football arenas. And that in and of itself, like, he could literally speak gibberish and it's still like, be like, this is an impressive human being who I can learn from. Because it's such a gift. It's such an art. And if you're a marketer, especially, like, forget anything he talks about, just the things he does on a stage, his body language, the way he communicates with the crowd, the way he speaks, how he speaks, all of that is worth just an infinite amount if you can pick up one or two tips from that. And so I think a lot of people dive deeper than they need to almost sometimes. It's like, just the act of what he's doing or people like him are doing is impressive enough.
Well, then I think we've got another criteria to identify through. So it's long form, it's tenure in a space, duration that you've been around. But then the third, and I think the important one, is being clear on what you're actually trying to learn, right? So if you're trying to get, tips on how to be a better human, Tony may or may not be the person. If you're trying to learn how to command a crowd and market from stage and fill a room, you better fucking believe he's the right person to watch.
Yep.
Because he's been doing it consistently, right? Undeniable.
100%.
Yeah, I love that. So, all right, I've got to go. We got to go into TikTok a little bit. I know you talk about it all the time, but I want to talk sort of strategy with it versus the other platforms, and why it? Why is that the thing, and what's unique about it for you, and what space does it fill for you?
Sure. I mean, two main points here. One is, and I said this a bunch of times in the last year or so, like, frankly, I'm a marketer. I don't really, people kind of, you get labeled early on as like, for a while I was a Facebook guy and then TikTok guy, because that's what you're focused on at that moment. But for me, just like, what are channels that can be exploited, it's a negative word, but can get leveraged, that have the highest growth potential that I can tap into? So like right now, even we can talk about this if we have time, but like Threads, like anytime there's something new that people are really into, that's where the opportunities are. That's the best time to be on it, is in that moment, not when everyone is on it. right? Not when it's been mainstream. And so for TikTok, it just happened to be right time, right place. I got banned by Facebook personally. Didn't really impact our business because we have lots of media buyers on Facebook, but I was trying to figure out, like, what do I want to do? This is all I've done for the last, few years, really focused on Facebook heavily. And so the timing just worked out. They reached out to me. I had done some demos in their beta and was like, okay, this is interesting. I didn't really use it personally before, but saw it as an opportunity. And then the more we dove into it, the more I started seeing a lot of commonalities to Facebook's growth curve. So if you look at how Facebook grew as a social media company in terms of user growth, in terms of demographic growth, and in terms of investment in ad platform, TikTok followed and is following a very similar trajectory, right? And once you get past a billion monthly active users, it's really hard to deny. It's not going anywhere, right? And we can talk about the ban and stuff if you want, but that's a whole nother topic.
Obviously, we have to talk about the ban at least a little bit.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
It's entertaining for people.
Yeah, so we can, I know people still talking about it. But
well, you've got two camps, right? You've got people that are like, what the fuck? How did he get banned from Facebook? And then you have the people that are like, oh yeah, obviously that happens all the time.
Yeah. So we can talk about that, but like just to finish on this specific TikTok thread of like why, you need to have diversification, right? So again, I don't really care if it's TikTok. It scares me to see businesses, unless you're like a brand new business. And I think when you're brand new, being single channel, single focus is important. But once you start to get momentum, and you're doing, $50,000, $100,000 minimum a month, like you need to start looking at channel 2, channel 3. You need to have other traffic centers. You need other sales generators for you. And TikTok happens to be a really effective one because it's got scalability, right? So there's a lot of places you can advertise out there. There aren't many that have 1 billion users on it and are growing, right? So you need to have something that has a lot of users that's growing and also a platform that's investing heavily in their ad tech. Right? So one of the things people forget when they're comparing TikTok to Meta, of course, Meta is still a better ad platform. It's undoubtable, but that's obvious, right? It's been around. The ad platform is going on, I think, like 15, 16 years since it's been live, right? Mm-hmm. And it has over $500 billion of spend. So just the amount of data is just a massive, 100 billion every year in spend, $500 billion around it total. TikTok launched their ad platform less than 4 years ago, right? And the first year or 2 years was less than 10 billion in spend. Next year it'll do more than YouTube in terms of ad spend. So it's eventually they'll catch up, but it's still way behind in terms of just the number of data, number of years. But they're investing so heavily. So where they're at, like if you compared like Facebook year 3, year 4 to TikTok year 3, year 4, it's like night and day where TikTok is compared to if you're doing apples to apples. And they're just recruiting a lot of the best talent. They're pulling talented members of the ad team from Google, from Meta, investing heavily. They have an amazing roadmap. And I think it just fits in really nicely in terms of direct response, in terms of top of funnel. My buddies at, I believe it's No Commerce, might be them, which company that was doing post-purchase surveys. And they basically saw that this is over a year ago too, so it's higher now. About 8 to 9% of all e-commerce purchases, when they asked the customer where they first heard about the product, where they first saw the product, it was TikTok. So that's going to continue to grow into the double digits, where people are the first place they're seeing products and experiencing brands is on TikTok. So you want to be there, you need to be there from a understanding a full marketer's journey of like, this is a touch point in a journey. And this is a great way to get in front of a lot of people very cost effectively. And then the final piece of it is like, I don't really care if you actually spend $1 on TikTok, but I do care that you learn how to advertise on TikTok. And that sounds kind of weird, that statement. But the reason is because every other platform, from YouTube to IG to Facebook to any other ones, is following that format. They've all gone 9:16. They've all gone short form. They've all gone full screen video. So they're all following TikTok's lead in terms of the content style, which means you need to understand the content style. That's the more important thing. It's not the technicals of TikTok media buying. It's understanding, how do I make really good short form ad creative that can stop scrolls, spark curiosity, grab attention, get people to actually watch and actually pay attention. That's more what I care about teaching people. And if you can understand that, one, you'll do good on TikTok, which is great. But two, you'll do better on YouTube with Shorts. You'll do better on Facebook and Instagram with Reels. You do better with Stories. You'll do better across the board because you understand how to advertise in this kind of new short form world that we're in.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and you hit on a couple of the specifics of what's important about the platform. what are, and I want to talk threads, and I want to have the entertaining story of Facebook's ban also, but let's stay on TikTok for a second. So, how do you create differently when you're looking at TikTok as a medium, and what does the funnel look like? And is the funnel different if you're starting it on TikTok and stopping the scroll and getting the initial attention there?
Yeah, the funnel looks moderately different. It's not dramatic. It's things that work more on Facebook, or at least historically work more on Facebook. They're actually working a little less now, which I think consumer behavior is changing in general. But like, advertorials, pre-sales, longer form sales pages, we don't see translating as well to TikTok. So TikTok is definitely, shorter form pages, like much more value, much more like really good creative UGC content above the fold, really getting the message across above the fold, not making people have to scroll very deep into the page to get information. In terms of the actual like content on TikTok and how you create differently for TikTok, it's really a heavy emphasis on trends and communities on TikTok. And when I say trends and communities on TikTok, I'm not talking about like the latest dance or something like that. I'm talking about like understanding culturally what's happening right now, like news, pop culture, what's going on right now that I should be working into my ads. So like when, ChatGPT was blowing up, it was like, well, let's start doing some ads where the opening shot is like asking a funny question in ChatGPT because everyone's thinking about that. So let's leverage that because it's top of mind in our creative. So it's more so just like, you need to be more like on the ball in terms of the level of creativity you're putting behind it, not in terms of like the production value, but in terms of just the ideas behind it, the hook, the visual, the angle, all those things matter a lot on TikTok, and they matter more on other channels now too. But it's all about like, what am I saying in the first second? What am I saying in the first 2 to 3 seconds? What am I doing visually in the first few seconds of the ad that's going to get people to actually like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I need to hear the answer to this. Oh, I really am curious about this, because you're dealing with just this endless swipe and endless scroll. And so that's really important. And just making content that doesn't suck, because if you make very like salesy ad focused creative on TikTok, that's going to cause TikTok users to potentially leave TikTok or abandon the process, which TikTok does not want because they're in the game of addiction. And so they're going to penalize you. You're going to pay a lot more for cost per thousand impressions on a CPM basis than you would if you can understand how to create things that feel native, that are using, things like green screens, that are using duets, stitches, reaction style videos, video comment replies. There's all these kind of formats and styles that are native to the platform that you need to understand. And that's like, you should be plugging in your creative and your angles and your messaging into those formats and frameworks.
Love that. So those things, you mentioned some of the kind of native formats, but you started with a sort of capturing attention faster. And that's obviously relevant in all ads. How do you get attention right away? But you also mentioned from a funnel perspective, if you're driving off to wherever you have, the buy now button, trying to keep whatever you can above the fold for the call to action. Is that all just because the people that are on TikTok or the platform itself lends itself to a much faster paced environment where you're scrolling?
Yeah, you have less time, right? People have less patience for being bored, right? So it's like, if I'm on TikTok, and it's not just TikTok too, now it's shorts, it's reels, all these. If I'm in these scrolls where I'm just going, like, this is what's I want to be entertained. We're interrupting with advertising. And so every second that I'm getting that person off of what they were doing before, I need to continue to reinforce that you should be here. Like, there's a reason for you to be here. And as soon as I bore them, as soon as it seems like it's not relevant to them anymore, as soon as I get lazy and do something relatively boring or not personalized, like, they're going to go back to that thing because that's what they really care about. This is just an interruption. And they're kind of humoring us and going along with it because, like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I had the curiosity. And so I need to, every like step, every word, every visual needs to build on that to a conclusion. And if I add too much stuff, if I make them think too hard, if I make them do too much work, any of those things, they're just going to revert back to what I care about, which is this automatic pilot part of my brain, just scrolling through videos. So it's more about just like you're playing a different game there, where you're not the prize. Like, you're not the primary reason like they're there in this moment. You're kind of an afterthought that got their attention, but they're there for TikTok, they're there for Instagram, they're there for YouTube, for the content.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I want to talk Threads, because we're at July 7th right now, 2023. Yep. Threads dropped 2 days ago on a random Wednesday. Threads is the Twitter competitor. Yeah, Twitter clone and it really is a fucking clone. I mean, It's like, you look at it and you're just like, oh my God. It's a ballsy move by Zuck. It's an aggressive move by Zuck to go head to head with Elon on this. Maybe poking him to fight. But the question is it going to win? Right? And what's the benefit to a marketer, short term or long term? And I have some thoughts on it, but how are you approaching it right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan out of the gate. Was on it like basically the first hour or so, was on it comparatively pretty early. And if you can talk about like just earliness in terms of like 24 hours, 36 hours, but it's been a good amount.
Or was?
I think it's like 200,000. So it's not like not in the first like 100,000, but it was
200,000 is pretty early, man. I was like 2 million or something, and it's still, I was like, damn, 2 million already.
Well, so as of yesterday, in the first 24 hours, I think the first 18 hours, it broke 30 million users.
Wow.
So now again, like, I posted this and people have commented, and it's like, it's not truly apples to apples because it is pulling over Instagram followers. So it's piggybacking Instagram, which I think is actually part of why this is going to work. I think this is actually a brilliant move. I think in the future, you're going to see more of these companies, the TikToks, the Googles, the Metas, like doing this, where it's like, if I want to build new apps that can then piggyback on my audience. Because that's the thing, is like the struggle with starting a new social media app is that everybody starts back from zero, and nobody likes starting from zero. It's like, shit, I worked so hard to build my Instagram following text. Now I got to come over here, where it's like, I already have Twitter, I already have this many followers. Now I got to start from zero over here. The brilliance they did here is like, I posted this the other day. Like, I think I have, let me see, just to like real time. So I'm up to 3,948 followers on Threads in less than 2 days. My Twitter followers, I only have 5,645. I've been on Twitter since 2008. Think about that.
Right.
2008, almost 6,000 followers on Twitter. 2 days on Threads, I almost have 4,000 followers. So because I'm not starting from zero on Threads, I'm much more likely to use it, because every thread I'm posting now, I'm getting engagement. I'm not getting 0, 0, 0. I'm getting dopamine hits right away. And that's the brilliance from the engineering side of this app, is like the dopamine hits. And it's a game. It's an addictive game. Like, that's all they have. Whole neuroscientists, all they do is how to make these apps more addictive. So yeah, I think that's going to be the future, is like, if you are Meta, letting people build an audience here and then launch app B over here and let people just move their following audience over here. I think that's the future. And it seems to be the game they're playing. Zuck talked about specifically, is like letting you bring your audience in places, which is great in my opinion. And I think it's going to be beneficial to them. I think it's a smart move. I'm not a huge Meta fan. I've never been a Meta fan. They banned me. I have a lot of bad blood with them, but in terms of like, this is what they should have been doing instead of the metaverse. Like this, I think this is a much better investment this is in their wheelhouse. Meta knows how to build addictive social media apps. That's their thing, right? Or at least grow them and acquire them, right? So Instagram, WhatsApp, they acquired them, but still, like, they grew Instagram from a relatively small app to a monster. So they know how to make things that are addictive, keep people on the app. That's their bread and butter. Like, keep doing that. Build this, grow this, put ads on it, monetize it, rinse and repeat, do it again. So yeah, I think there's a lot of advantages. I think the fact that you're starting not from zero. I think the fact that from a public sentiment and PR standpoint, Zuck looks like the hero here, which is amazing to me, because it's like, if you said 4 years ago, 2 years ago, that Zuck would be the media hero, people would think you're crazy, but he happens to be less bad than Elon right now. People really hate Elon and Twitter. And this is the potential to beat Twitter. Therefore, Threads is good, Twitter's bad. So Threads is going to get a lot of free marketing, a lot of free PR because of this.
So how's that going to translate? How do you see this translating from for the user? And how do you see, what's the benefit to jumping on the bandwagon? Who should do it? Who shouldn't do it right now, and why?
Yeah, I mean, everybody should jump on it early, because if you understand how these apps are developed from the actual algorithm and how they're built day one, they basically build it so that early users get disproportionate reach and engagement, because they want early users to feel good. They want them to think this is like, I can be famous here. I can go viral here. This is one of the things TikTok did really well early on, is all these new users would go viral. It's like that didn't happen anywhere else. So we had 0 followers went viral. And that really anchors you in deep. You get such a hit of dopamine all the time by doing that. And so when you have new apps in the early days, if you can get on there early and be hyperactive, you can build a large following, a large audience much easier and much more quickly than you can if you hopped on Twitter today or Instagram today, right? So it's like, even if you're thinking about this could be interesting to me at some point, I'd rather you get on there now and start building, and then decide if you want to use it down the road. Because eventually, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, whenever that time period is, they're going to turn off that kind of bonus reach, and it's going to be a lot harder to grow there. Right now is the easy time to grow.
Is the bonus reach just a product of it being a new platform, so they allow the reach to be larger when it's brand new, or is it when you are new as a user? Do you have thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of this is it's assumptions, it's hearing from insights. Sure. It's none of stuff for a fact, but it definitely happens on every app. I think it's a combination of two things. One, I think I do believe there's an engineering component to it, where it's intentionally people are getting more reach today than they're going to get in a year from now, just based on their follower ratio and stuff. But the other thing too is, because there's less users, it means if you create a lot of content, you have a greater chance of reaching more people, right? There's just less content to sift through. It's like, if I post a tweet today or on Instagram today, it just goes, or TikTok, like there's so much content being created. Whereas like if I posted a YouTube video, the early days of YouTube, not a lot of videos being posted on YouTube or Threads. Like, it's early. There's a lot of people coming on to consume content, but not a lot of people creating content. So there's that mismatch of eyeballs to content for those eyeballs to see.
Yeah, that's an astute observation, and I think I've heard that in the past for new platforms and forgotten it.
Yeah.
But a good reminder for all people right now. I guess if you're creating for Twitter, fundamentally, it's the same. You copy and paste what you're doing on Twitter, and it will probably work.
Yeah, I think people will eventually figure out how to put a unique, like how to use it in its most unique fashion. Like, what are some of the nuances and differences? But right now, it's definitely, it's like the early days, of when Reels were out. Like, Reels and Shorts on YouTube were just TikToks. Everyone was just taking their TikToks, until Masseri and people started putting like penalties on posting TikToks. And then people are like, okay, I guess I'll create unique content for Instagram if I want to keep using it. But right now, I think, yeah, you're going to see a lot of just people's best tweets, moving them over and posting them as threads.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, I gotta get the Facebook story. So you got banned from Facebook. How'd it happen? Why?
I was waiting you out. I was like, maybe we'll just wrap, and I want him to tell the story. No, I'm just kidding with you. Yeah, I mean, I hate telling the story because there's not a great story to tell, and that's like, it's part of the story. It kind of makes it a good story because there's not a great story. It's like, I just woke up. Man. Yeah, I mean, I literally, like, this is the full story. Like, I woke up one morning and I logged into Facebook, and it had a white box and just a message that says your account's been banned for, violating our terms of service. And I wasn't given the ability to appeal, and I wasn't given a specific reason as to what I violated. And at the time, I really wasn't using Facebook that much anymore personally, or I don't run. I advise on a lot of ad accounts, but I'm not in there day to day running, pressing all the buttons. So I really hadn't run an ad on Facebook in quite a while, and I hadn't really posted anything on Facebook much. And the things I did post were all like, family stuff. It was like us at, Universal, or us doing this, or a birthday, nothing controversial. And so it was really like totally out of right field. And yeah, I mean, it's still to this day, I've never been given a reason, never been given the ability to appeal. And it should scare people. Like, it should scare people that you invest so much time into building up assets and a following and a community on this profile, this property, and it can be taken away from you without recourse at any moment, without any multiple strikes, without the ability to appeal. And for me, the thing that's hurt the most about it, and why now I give this advice to everybody in terms of backing things up, because you can go to Facebook now, you can back up all your stuff. I recommend if you're watching this video, go do that today, is all the photos and I've been on Facebook since I was a senior in high school. I went to a boarding high school, so I was like really early. I went to all the Ivy League colleges, and then some of the boarding high schools got it. So I was on it really, really early. I had basically my entire adult life was on Facebook. Just tons and tons of photos and videos that I don't have saved anywhere else. They're from old phones, they're from friends' phones, all this stuff, like wedding stuff, like posts, and all that's gone. I mean, I'm sure it's on a server somewhere, but like I'll never see that again. And that's messed up. Like that's not technically, legally, it is Facebook property, but like those are my photos. Those are my memories. And it is messed up to live in a world where like some random algorithm or human being sitting in a cubicle somewhere can basically delete somebody's digital life without having to give them a clear reason. And for me, like that's the thing I feel like I'm a huge like get government out of everyone's life. I don't like government involved in anything really, but I will say when it comes to like freedom of speech and this type of stuff, there needs to be some type of law put in place on these companies that are basically utilities. Like once you pass, I would say, let's say like 100 million users, something like that, the size of the company, where you cannot ban somebody, where there needs to be like a 3-strike policy, plus if they violate the 3rd strike in each one, there needs to be a specific like document right now. Like this is exactly what you did. Here's the proof that you did it and everything. Like I think at a minimum that needs to be implemented, or else these companies will just keep doing this. And because there's just no recourse and you can't learn from it. And that's the last thing I'll say. And then I'll end my rant here is like, if you want people to stop breaking the rules, you need to tell people what rules they're breaking, right? It's like, it's impossible it's same thing on the ad side. When your ads get rejected, half the time it's like rejected for some generic reason. They don't tell you. It's like, well, how do I prevent it from happening the next time? And you can't, then you get banned. So it's like, if you want users and advertisers to be more compliant and to follow your rules, when you flag them for things, you should tell them, hey, we flagged you because you said this or did this or included this. Please don't do it again. And then most people will say, great, I didn't know that. I forgot. I didn't see that. I'm going to change it and not do it again. It's very simple. It's very logical. And it's infuriating that like, we're just still at this place where every day people are getting banned for no reason and we're not doing anything about it.
From a personal perspective, that's annoying as hell. From a business perspective, it's both annoying as hell and a cautionary tale of make sure that you have redundancy in all areas of your business. And, for at EasyPay Direct, from a payments perspective, just like you have ad accounts shut down, people have merchant accounts shut down
all the time. And if you don't account for that as you scale, you are doing a disservice to yourself. It's nobody else's fault but yourself, that as an entrepreneur, that you didn't create redundancy in an important area of your business. And unfortunately, I am like many people, I am very good at learning from my own mistakes once I have made them several times, but I'm not great at learning from other people's. And hopefully, that the story of getting banned from Facebook will help somebody else learn that, if you're heavily dependent on one of these platforms to drive traffic, however it is, whether you're using it as a paid tool or you are using it, quote unquote, organically, where you have a group, or you've got, a DM funnel that you're driving, or it's, hey, post a word in the comments and then you're reaching out to them. If that's your mechanism, you need to be aware that it's a volatile channel and you need to have other channels available. Yep, 100%.
Well, I love that, man. Well, I appreciate you carving out time. I've got 100 other questions. We did not dive into a couple of your other businesses that I want to, but I know we're at time. So in the interest of that, where do you want to send people? Where can people find out more about MaxFin or anything you've got going on?
Sure. So if you're interested at all in and potentially working on the traffic side, Unicorn Traffic, alloneword.com. If you're interested in anything we do on the education side, the teaching side, unicorninnovations.com. Those are the two places. And I'm on social media, at Max. If you want to follow me on Threads, at MaxFin. That's also my Instagram handle. And then on TikTok, it's at Maxwell_Fin.
Love it, man. I appreciate you carving out the time.
Of course, dude. Great talk to you.
Likewise.
Love it. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed doing it. I need your help. There are 3 places you can find Beyond a Million. The podcast itself, beyondamillion.com, which has some cool free resources, including a free course. And we finally launched the Beyond a Million YouTube channel. I would love it if you would go there and subscribe. And if you don't want to, you still would probably enjoy seeing the visual content. Check it out, youtube.com/@Beyond a Million.